Nestled among the quiet vineyards and tranquil hills of Sonoma County, California, lies a shadowed chapter of history that few discuss but none have forgotten: the Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders. Between 1972 and 1973, at least 7 young women went missing while hitchhiking in, or around the area of Santa Rosa, only to be found later dead in nearby rural ditches and ravines. These cases remain unsolved to this day, haunting Northern California and leaving a dark legacy in their wake. The story begins in early 1972, a time when hitchhiking was a common way for young people to get around. College students, free spirits, and high schoolers alike would catch rides to save money, often relying on strangers to take them from one point to another. But the freedom of the open road held dangers few had anticipated. Between February 1972 and December 1973, 7 young women were found dead, most bearing marks of strangulation or other violent trauma. It all began with the case of Yvonne Weber and Maureen Sterling, both just 13 years old and students at Herbert Slater Middle School. On February 4, 1972, the 2 girls were last seen hitchhiking near Santa Rosa's Cottingtown Mall. They vanished that night, leaving their families in agony and the community on edge. Their bodies were discovered several months later on a rural hillside in Santa Rosa, triggering widespread fear and a dedicated investigation by local authorities. The next victim, Kim Allen, a 19-year-old college student, was last seen on March 4, 1972, hitchhiking home from her job in Larkspur. Kim's remains were found in a ravine, bruised and battered, indicating that she had been violently assaulted before her death. As the pattern continued, investigators began piecing together eerie connections among the victims. Each was a young woman with a habit of hitchhiking, most were barefoot when found, and many were last seen near populated areas or along major roads. Yet no concrete evidence linked the deaths to a specific suspect. The Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders intensified with the disappearance of Lori Cursa, a 13-year-old who was last seen on November 11, 1972. Lori's body was discovered soon after in a creek bed, and her case bore a disturbing resemblance to those of the other victims. Like the others, she was barefoot, and her body showed signs of violent assault. The location and positioning of the bodies suggested that the killer, or killers, deliberately left them in isolated rural spots. While police were on high alert, Santa Rosa locals grew increasingly afraid, and many warned young women against hitchhiking. But the killer or killers continued to strike, seemingly unfazed by the mounting media attention and police presence. In December 1973, the body of Teresa Walsh, a 23-year-old hitchhiker, was discovered. She was last seen hitchhiking near her home in Malibu and, like the others, had been strangled. With her death, the total number of victims in this case reached 7, each one seemingly connected to the others by the deadly intersection of hitchhiking and isolation. With mounting pressure, the Santa Rosa Police and Sonoma County Sheriff's Office dedicated significant resources to solving the case, but investigative technology at the time was limited. DNA profiling didn't exist, and forensic analysis was still rudimentary, making it difficult to gather usable evidence from the remote crime scenes. Additionally, without witnesses or surveillance, authorities had no leads on who could be behind the killings. The case was also complicated by the area's transient population. California in the early 70s was a hub for free-spirited youth, and people regularly hitchhiked up and down the coast. This transient culture made it hard to keep track of potential suspects or persons of interest, and even harder to establish connections between victims and any possible offenders. Though the case remains unsolved, several theories have emerged over the years. One of the most notable came from renowned FBI profiler John Douglas, who, years after the killings, suggested the Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders bore some similarity to the methods of infamous serial killers. In fact, one of the early suspects in the case was Ted Bundy. Bundy was known to have traveled through California around the time of the murders and had a documented history of targeting young women. However, no concrete evidence ever linked him directly to these cases, and Bundy never confessed to any involvement in the Santa Rosa murders. Another suspect was the so-called Zodiac Killer, who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area from the late 60s to early 70s. The Zodiac's pattern of targeting strangers and leaving cryptic messages had an unsettling resonance with the Santa Rosa murders. However, again, no concrete evidence connected the two. Some locals even speculated that multiple killers were operating in the region, using Santa Rosa as a dumping ground for their victims. The Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders left a lasting impact on California's culture and law enforcement. Following these cases, the state saw a sharp decline in hitchhiking, as warnings and public campaigns dissuaded young people from engaging in this once common practice. For the families of the victims, however, these changes were little solace, as they continued to await answers that never came. Today, The Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders remain one of California's most haunting mysteries. Advances in DNA technology offer a sliver of hope that one day these cases could be solved, as authorities continue to revisit cold cases with new forensic methods. But time has eroded much of the physical evidence, and unless a witness comes forward or a new clue emerges, the mystery of who preyed on these young hitchhikers may forever remain a grim piece of California history. These chilling unsolved cases serve as a reminder of a time when freedom on the open road could turn deadly in an instant. As the years pass, the Santa Rosa Hitchhiker murders stand as an eerie warning and a sad chapter in California's past, a mystery that, despite the passage of time, continues to haunt those who remember it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy true crime stories and chilling unsolved mysteries, be sure to like this video, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button for more spine-tingling content.